mocked you when you moved with clarity, branded you delusional when you spoke of what they couldn't yet see. You were the outlier, the misunderstood, the one they dismissed in whispers and laughter. But that was before the vision became reality, before the storm broke and revealed who you really are. Now the ones who doubted, they're frozen in place, including him. When Elon Musk saw your face, he didn't just see a person. He saw prophecy fulfilled. In that instant, something ancient and unexplainable hit him. You were no longer the shadow in the corner of their perception. You were the storm they pretended would never arrive. The same lips that once curled with arrogance now tremble. The same minds that rolled their eyes now race to understand how you, the one they labeled broken, became the embodiment of everything they couldn't control. This is your moment. The reckoning isn't coming, it's here. And as destiny crowns you, even giants pause. Even Elon Musk freezes. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. The chosen one has arrived, and nothing will ever be the same. Calling someone insane was a defensive tactic, not a spontaneous occurrence. Their derision was a planned act of spiritual opposition, not an impromptu one. When you shouted insights that defied their logic, carried unquantifiable visions, and sensed realities no one else could touch, their only remaining weapon was disdain, because fear strikes rather than cowers when it encounters the unknown. What the world couldn't understand, it always crucified. As Noah constructed the ark under bright sky, society made fun of him. When Jesus performed healings on the Sabbath, they mocked him. With truth in her lungs and fire in her eyes, Joan of Arc was taken to her death. Before being hailed as a genius, Einstein was referred to be insane. These were the blueprint names, not exceptions. You entered a realm of divine resistance along with a divine heritage. They feared the unseen, not you, every time you were made fun of. The fabricated order was upset by your gift. Their delusion was broken by your knowledge. They categorized you instead of listening when you spoke about topics they hadn't yet experienced. You were just early, not incorrect. Crazy was never a diagnosis. Rather, it was a projection, a defense of their insignificance. They were frightened when they glimpsed beyond the veil. They targeted your clarity because they needed to undermine your confidence. They believed that you would give up your soul if they asked you enough questions, but you refused. You clung to something more profound than belief, even in your darkest hours, when uncertainty gnawed at your throat, and silence cried out louder than words. Faith, intuition, a knowing that didn't need applause to survive. They doubted your goal, your value, and your sanity. But you never gave up the fire. That perseverance was religious training, not weakness. You were being purified, while others were pointing fingers. You were creating opposition, while they were spreading rumors. They were unable to see the armor being built throughout each restless night, each pillow drenched with tears, and each instance in which you had to clutch your own hand in order to live. Their approval did not shield you. Truth, the type that pulsates in your dreams, lives in your bones, and whispers louder than their skepticism, did. The fact that despite the crumbling of your universe made you unbreakable. Because it was your birthright and not simply a belief. That truth got you through the storm. The world now starts to comprehend what you always knew as the curtain lifts and reality shifts. You were within the prophecy. You weren't insane. The intensity of your spiritual talents has increased. Now it roared like thunder where it had seemed like intuition. It was easy to tell when someone was lying. Before events happened, you could sense energy bending around them. Your sense of judgment becomes a weapon. You transformed your observation into foresight. You were now knowing, not speculating. And there was indisputable proof of that knowledge. Breakthroughs started to occur quickly, one after the other. Not by accident, but by alignment. The same things you screamed for in secret, and battled for and silently began to come to pass. It was confirmation, not chance. Your inner and outside worlds were synchronizing after you had held on to it through insanity. Without knocking, doors opened. Without begging, paths were cleared. The cosmos seemed to have been waiting for you to acknowledge who you were before bowing to your authority. Recurring numbers, conversations that reflected your thoughts, and strangers sending messages that answered your quiet prayers were examples of supernatural synchronicity that illuminated the path. The moment was too divine, too perfect. You were awakening, not hallucinating. And the world was forced to adapt the more you went into the reality. Now that there was evidence, the term crazy started to lose its impact. Those who had before questioned were now seeing the manifestation of your words. Those who chuckled were beginning to regret their smiles. They could no longer deny the transformation that was taking place. The truth started to speak for itself, through you, all around you, and in every instant that gave the unseen a reality, so you didn't need to prove anything. And those who used to call you insane stopped talking. Their ridicule was never as loud as their quiet. This was the prophetic whispering, not a coincidence. Then the inevitable, indisputable, and memorable moment arrived. Something completely exploded into the area where uncertainty formerly predominated as the air changed. It screamed, not whispered. A conflict, an occasion, a divine outburst that no skeptic could deny, no jeer could silence. Everything they believed to be true was shattered by the shockwaves that struck Earth as the prophecy came true. It was public, unvarnished, and blatantly real. It occurred right in front of them. Someone who used to roll their eyes at you was now still as they saw everything you said come to life. Literally, not figuratively. All of it rose at once. The words they rejected, the cautions they mocked, the strength they said you never had. It was no longer a dispute. It was unapologetic, supernatural evidence. For them, this was a breaking point. Not simply a moment for you. They held on to a veil that ripped in two. The fire of your truth melted their conceit. Silence fell in the room. It thickened with vitality. What they derided as illusion was now a power that stood before them, unquestionable, divine, and uncontrollable. There was no need for you to yell. Theatrics weren't necessary for you. The revelation just took over as you stood in harmony. Like fire through parched grass, the energy flowed through the room. They were unable to avoid it. They couldn't act as if it hadn't happened. The instant the insane person turned into the prophet was the divine reversal. The communal fantasy was shattered. Once participating individuals started whispering to one another, unsure and shaky. Others watched with wonder, their faces white with comprehension, while others attempted to conceal their panic. You didn't demand an apology or brag. You were not required to. Pride sank to his knees under the weight of the truth. Once concealed by pain and mockery, your identity was now completely exposed. Not because you battled for acceptance, but because prophecy always makes its way clear. The whole game altered at that same instant. They were no longer able to justify you. You could no longer be reduced to a joke. The same lips that had laughed were now unable to speak. The weight of revelation now caused the same hearts that had previously passed judgment to shudder. You were demonstrating the divine right, not disproving them. This was always about manifestation, not affirmation. The world was suddenly forced to see what they had made such a concerted effort to ignore. Anybody may hear messages like this, chosen one, but very few will take use of their full potential. That's what we're here to assist you with. This is the moment you've been waiting for all your life. Zoom is now hosting the weekly Chosen One group calls again. These gatherings are actual power vortices where destiny is made, and the consciousness of the selected is united to create something that is impossible to exist in isolation. Everything changes at this point. You enter your brilliance at this point. A portal opens once a week, but only for those who dare to enter. Be mindful of your level. Obsidian Inner Order members may participate in these life-changing experiences and feel the energy flow through their whole body. Participants at our most recent gathering were astounded to learn that the Great Pyramids of Giza were really highly advanced ancient power plants, and that the layout of Washington, D.C. exactly matched the Kabbalistic tree of life. Members of the Star Chamber have unrestricted access to the entire recorded archive, which is a wealth of knowledge that increases in value every week. This is the moment that defines you. There is nowhere else to find the information, the connection, and the power that come via these conversations. While there are still a few Star Chamber spots left, sign up for the Obsidian Inner Order right now, link in the description. Not only is your presence appreciated, but it is required. The call has been ringing in your spirit. Will you answer it? Now is the moment. The revelation rips something deeper than just the surface. The mockers' thoughts spiraled out of control. What they had previously laughed at, disregarded, and derided in public was now in front of them, wrapped in indisputable reality. Additionally, the fictitious feeling of superiority that underpinned their psyches began to crumble. They were never prepared to face the reality of being mistaken about you. They were unable to make sense of it. How could someone with a reputation for instability suddenly possess unquestionable spiritual authority? The energy they said didn't exist may emanate from the one they said would fail. Once boosted by judgment and laughter, their egos started to crumble under the pressure of what they were unable to see. There was too much discord. Too loud is the shame. It will inevitably crumble. Desperate to change history and discover a loophole that would excuse their conceit, some became compulsive, re-watching past talks and going through every instance in which they rejected you. However, there was none. The facts were obvious. Their pride was no match for the mirror that suddenly stared back at them. The prophecy was real. Others went silent, broken, too embarrassed to talk, too unsteady to carry on the performance. They lost control of their whole worldview, not simply of how they felt about you. What else had they been incorrect on, if you were correct? What did they become if the person they ridiculed was divine? Some people silently, dangerously, and inwardly unraveled after seeing your ascent. It revealed the extent to which they depended on the appearance of control. It wasn't just about you, control. It was about their dread of what you stood for. A contradiction in breathing, a living disturbance, a reminder that they had overlooked the holy person in front of them. This was revelation, shattering the delusion, not revenge. They were not punished. Rather, their suffering was the result of their stupidity, conceit, and preference for comfort above the truth. You didn't curse. You didn't do anything. The job was done for you by reality. They now traverse the remains of their own illusion. Their denial has become obsession. Their pride has become bewilderment, and their laughter has become stillness. They're the ones who are now doubting their sanity, because they weren't ready to see you ascend. Not only can prophecies foretell the future, they also set the stage for it. They rouse individuals, ignite time, and stir the environment. You were on a divinely constructed road that was masquerading as confusion, not a haphazard one. Every insult, treachery, every holdup was required. It was holy sequence, not sabotage. Because prophecy is made in fire and does not come clean. The first thing you need to realize is that a prophecy is a spiritual equation, rather than just a message. The mockery was necessary, the basic mockery. To create ignition, resistance was required. Your power was being built, not blocked, by the storm around you. Activation would not have been necessary in the absence of opposition. In order for you to perform your part, they were playing theirs. Timing is important, which is the second reality. The delay was calibration, not denying. You couldn't enter fulfillment too soon. It was time to set the scene. The delusion had to peak. The jeers must have been loud. It had to be the crescendo of the suffering. Because the system would not have been overthrown by a silent revelation. It had to be loud and inevitable. Because divine time is flawless, it is slow. Every betrayal made flying more difficult. Every miscommunication amounted to spiritual pressure. Additionally, they unwittingly assisted in aligning your roots each time they attempted to bury you. Unbeknownst to them, their efforts to prevent you served as practice for your ascension. The prophecy was intended to go through the fire, not to escape it. You were co-creating your destiny, rather than just fulfilling it. Each time you made the decision to continue, in spite of the humiliation, you matched the frequency of the prophecy. Your suffering wasn't in vain. Rather, it was evidence that you had the spiritual weight to bear the mantle and the strength to withstand what was about to happen. Prophecy develops in this way, through divine paradox, rather than on straight lines. Camouflage was what seemed to be a flop. Preparation was what felt like abandonment. Your moment was waiting for you to become indisputable. You didn't miss it. The dominoes now fall one after the other as everything lines up. You turn turmoil into evidence, rather than just surviving it. What was previously invisible is now evident, indisputable, and timely. The previous system broke down the instant your truth was made public. Those who had previously asserted control and established their authority via deceit, manipulation, and terror began to flee. Silence, not truth, was the foundation of their dominion. And they're drowning in their own story now that you've discovered your voice. Exposure, their worst dread, has now materialized. The first indication was panic, a hurry to conform to what they had previously rejected. Hollow apologies wrapped in phony smiles, and unexpected friendliness from individuals who had previously made fun of you. They trust in your strength, rather than your predictions. They are now attempting to alter history in real time, as they have nothing left to hide behind. You recall that they like to be seen as comrades rather than enemies. You recall every detail. To drown out the facts, they could no longer control. Some doubled down, frantic, clutching to denial like a life raft, spinning bigger falsehoods and shouting into thin air. They'll refer to it as a coincidence. It will be referred to as manipulation, anything but divine, because they will have to confront the reality of who they are and are not if they acknowledge that what is occurring is genuine. The darkness's last stand is here, exposed, surrounded, and collapsing. Instead of being powerful, it strikes out of fear. It is aware of its limited time. It fights nasty because it recognizes that it cannot live in your presence after seeing the light rising. It causes misunderstandings. Cowards are recruited by it. However, it's too late. It's a broken foundation. The LIE is no longer in control. Their organizations, beliefs, reputations, and systems were all based on your quiet and were designed to keep individuals like you small, unnoticed, and forgettable. But as soon as you came into view, the whole structure started to decay, because everything based on a falsehood is undermined by the truth, which does more than only free. The fall is rapidly speeding up. They are now battling the inevitable nature of truth rather than you. They sense it coming from all directions, not just from your speech, but also from other people who are also awakening. This is prophetic, not personal. Manipulation is coming to an end. The altars of falsehood are crumbling. Now that the truth has a voice, and that voice is you, the falsehood cannot endure. Now that the world has seen, and the prophecy has come to pass, the true test is not showing your strength, but using it precisely. You no longer hesitate when you walk. Your mission is no longer a mystery to you. Clarity is standing in the place of the dread. However, this clarity necessitates accountability, since real power is disciplined rather than noisy. And everything changes now that you've taken on your true self. You are no longer the same person they criticized, disregarded, and questioned. That ghost has been buried by you. The current state is emotional sovereignty, untouchability, and refinement. It's not like you wince when they speak. When people gaze, you don't become smaller. You now know that alignment is the aim, not being understood. You're in complete alignment now. Retaliation is not the topic of this new chapter. To establish your victory, you don't have to make them suffer. Your goal was never to bring them down. Elevation was always the goal of the prophecy, not humiliation. You now have the ability to rebuild rather than retaliate. You make good use of your divine energy. You now represent your value rather than only explaining it. Your ability to control yourself becomes your superpower. Not every whisper or movement of a shadow causes you to respond. You choose peace because you are powerful, not because you are a passive person. You realize that sometimes strength just comes in and changes the environment. It doesn't always roar. You have turned into that person. The world now observes with respect rather than mockery. They notice the purpose in your poise and the power in your stillness. Your presence is the performance. You don't have to do it. The evidence is your alignment. You exude honesty. You don't seek approval. Every move you take turns you into a mirror. Both their potential and their avoidance are reflected in you. That is the burden of authority. Since you have experienced the ridicule and know the path from humiliation to sovereignty, you bear it with grace, even if you reveal what others are still concealing. This is the advancement of your tale, not its conclusion. You now walk not as someone who survived, but as someone who dominates, because you have combined the agony, the vision, and the power. The crown is in your spirit, not on your head. And this is only the start. Other people stirred as you rose, long disregarded and buried in their own shadows. Silent watchers sensed a change. Your discovery was catalytic, not solitary. Something in the air was broken by your ascent. Unbelievably, a wave was sent forth, causing the shackles of those who had been quietly awaiting permission to awaken to come free. You triggered a movement rather than just altering your reality. Millions of people used your truth as a mirror. Individuals started to recall their own visions, the ones they suppressed to blend in and the ones they buried to live. They were reminded of who they were before the world made them smaller by seeing you ascend. Theirs had cause to awaken because of your might. It was resonance, not envy. In your flames, they saw their reflection. Suppression-based systems started to falter. Organizations that gained power by suppressing the unseen began to lose ground. The weight of revelation was too great for the appearance of control. You sparked a revolution under the pretext of a personal comeback, not merely a return to your identity. What had been derided turned into motion. What was formerly referred to be insanity turned into a message. The quiet is suddenly erupting all around. What people used to swallow, they are now saying. What they once doubted, they now trust. Their eyes, which have been conditioned to turn away for a long time, are seeing. Your light revealed the darkness rather than just illuminating a route, and it can't hide once it's out.